today, the Okoa Kenya movement presented the 1.5 million signatures to the Electoral Commission that could see Kenya headed towards a referendum to changing the constitution. And we're glad this evening to be joined by the chair of the NARC Kenya party, Martha Karua. Thanks for making the time to be with us tonight. Okay. Let's start by talking about this push to amend the constitution. We're 5 years into it. What is so broken that requires a referendum at this point?
I think what's so broken is the behavior of the Jubilee administration. If you remember, way back in beginning of 2014, the CORD leadership, in particular the Right Honorable former Prime Minister, asked for dialogue. And the Jubilee administration said no. Although the constitution is so clear that citizens have to be involved in issues of governance, these are issues, some of which could have been dealt with through dialogue. The issue of raising the money, the amount of money going to the counties. Issue of the electoral reforms that are needed. If the administration doesn't want to talk to citizens, citizens are not helpless. The constitution gives a leeway. And now citizens are speaking through the 1.5 plus million signatures. And they are saying, this is the way we are going to fix it, because nobody has been available to fix it. So citizens want certain things decreed by the constitution, because we have a regime that is unwilling to engage its own citizens.
All right, so is the push for a referendum based on the fact that we have, as you put it, a regime that's unwilling to engage the citizens, or a fundamental flaw with the constitution? Because some would say, if it's based on this regime, then are we going to keep changing the constitution based on who's in power?
It's tightening. You know, these are things that could have been left to discretion. But if we begin by wrong exercise of discretion, it's better to tighten then in the constitution and give the parameters, instead of leaving it to the benevolence of the executive, how much money to give to the counties. We cap it at 45. The constitution says not less than 15%. We are now capping it at 45%. Let the counties get 45% of the national revenue. So we won't have in future to argue with any executive. So it's not a question of changing it every time there is a change of regime. It's a question of prescribing it within the law.
All right, and once you speak of the benevolence of the regime, the Jubilee administration says, in fact, they have been more than benevolent, in that it is, in fact, not 15% of the revenue that's going to the counties from the national budget, but it is far more. They're even putting it at 30%. So if it's a matter of benevolence, the Jubilee administration says they have been more than fair.
Their benevolence as perceived from their point of view, having refused to engage the others. They have not even been able to properly engage governors. So their benevolence from their own point of view is totally unappreciated. Let us put a prescription on how much to give, and that's 45%. That is what is being proposed by Okoa Kenya.
All right, but you all supported this constitution 5 years ago when we were passing it.
Yes.
Some say, well, then these are the things that you should have brought up at that time, and now starting to make these changes in the law where you're saying that you want to cap some of these things and actually put them in law. But where were you then 5 years ago, wholly supporting this constitution that was then overwhelmingly voted in by the Kenyan voter? Did you not see some of these flaws when you were supporting the constitution?
I have not stopped supporting the constitution. And perhaps if I was the one implementing of it, or if it was people who really wanted a new constitutional order, these problems would not have arisen. But now, to avoid such problems in the future, we just tighten the loose ends. And no constitution in the world can be perfect. Not everything is foreseeable. So amendments are foreseen, and that's why the constitution provides for a popular initiative, which is the route we have taken. When Parliament doesn't respond to the needs of the people, the executive doesn't respond. The good thing with the design of our constitution is that the citizen is not helpless. This is now the citizen speaking through 1.5 million signatures. And it will be the citizens speaking through the referendum and saying, let us have more money with the people at the counties. After all, when we leave it at the national level, it's being looted left, right, and center.
All right. Speaking of accountability, some would say there's quite a bit of corruption also at the county level. Kenyans were shocked by some of the stories that were coming out of Bungoma County, for example, wheelbarrows costing
exotic wheelbarrows.
Yes, costing 104 billion shillings.
Yes.
And that's saying that we're taking more money to these institutions where curtains are being bought for millions of shillings in public hospitals, in Meru, for example, that then what are we doing? Then just passing on more money, and that perhaps some of the issues that you should also be addressing is accountability and transparency measures, even at the county level, even as you ask for more money to be devolved.
It's actually the issue of accountability is in the Okoa Kenya document.
Okay.
Because separation of powers is coming in Article 10 as one of the principles, or one of the national values and principles of governance. When you talk of separation of powers, it means the implementer cannot also be the watchdog, and then we can have better accountability. But when everything is mixed up and the watchdog is also an implementer, in a bid to cover up your own shortcomings, you'll be less pushy with the people who are not being accountable. You will not be strict because you too may have a skeleton. So this is an issue being looked after. And we must separate as Kenyans the things that we need and the bad behavior we are currently witnessing. Both need to be looked into. So we bring in new provisions, and at the same time, we attend to the issues of accountability.
All right, let's talk about the Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission, which is also one of the issues that has been presented in your referendum draft bill. How do you then trust this Electoral Boundaries Commission to conduct an election or a referendum in which you are asking for its own reform and for its own commissioners to go home? Many a times, CORD and with yourself as well, have expressed distrust in this Electoral Commission. Yet, you are still presenting your signatures and expecting the same Electoral Commission to conduct this referendum. How do you reconcile that irony?
We've always been seeking for change with the participation of a regime that has been oppressive. Even during the KANU days when we were asking for change, it was a largely KANU parliament that was going to usher in the change. So there's nothing contradictory at all. You put pressure on things to be done.
So
the
do you
Electoral
trust
Commission,
IEBC to conduct
not
this
fully,
referendum
but
fairly?
they'll conduct the referendum. We will be there to watch, you see. And once people vote overwhelmingly, results can be changed. One of the changes that is being introduced is making sure that during elections and any other national voting like a referendum, the tallies at the constituency level will not be subject to announcement at the headquarters, because it's between that transportation and transmission that there is tampering. We want the votes to be announced to political parties, to the people at the constituency level, and to the media at that level. Therefore, it means it will not be possible to tamper because it's already out.
All right. Some of these changes you're proposing are for when you change, your proposed changes to the IEBC, and if you are successful with your referendum. What happens if you are unhappy with the outcome of this referendum?
And
if for some reason you seem to think that the Electoral and Boundaries Commission did not conduct itself as it should have, what then? Another referendum?
We will continue pushing for change. If you remember, even to get this constitution that we have, it was a journey for 20 years. This particular journey, to have the constitution amended, need not take us 20 years. But if someone is asking if, we're going to do our best to ensure it succeeds. But what if it didn't? We'll be at it again. You can't give up on your country. You can't give up on your home. Kenya is our home. So we will continue trying our best to make a better Kenya, a greater Kenya. no matter what.
Okay, let's talk about the Okoa Kenya, finally, the Okoa Kenya
Yes.
movement and the initiative,
Yes,
if
yes.
you like, and its constitution. It's bringing members of the Code Coalition.
Yes.
It's bringing Na Kenya on board.
Civil
society
society.
of governors. Could you explain to us then how you fit into this? Because I think Kenyans are,
I fit
interested
into
to
this
know
as a Kenyan.
and your party as well.
As a Kenyan,
Uh-huh.
standing with other Kenyans, and in our party we agreed that we leave our members to follow their heart. And I and many, many others have supported the referendum.
The governors?
The
Are they on
governors,
board? Because we know they were also pursuing their own referendum push.
Yep. We are hoping that the governors will now see their issue is firmly included. And it would make sense that we all push together. Nothing is political in this quest for amendment of the constitution. All these are the things a majority of Kenyans, I am sure even those within Jubilee, would support, because those suggested changes in the electoral regime are going to benefit everyone. The suggested changes of more money to the counties will benefit everyone. Tightening up of the provisions relating to the Land Commission, so there is no push and pull between the Cabinet Secretary Lands and the Lands Commission, giving the Land Commission the mandate not only to manage land, but to also oversee the registries.
Okay.
This will mean that they will now be able to carry out their mandate of redressing historical injustices and weeding up corruption, especially by politicians at the Lands Office.
All right.
Yeah.
You say it's not a political process, but you are political parties, and some are now starting to
And we are
speculate.
political
And you are
animals.
political animals, that's
Yes.
right. So some are starting to speculate about what's going on between Na Kenya and CORD. Could you just talk to us about the future of this? Do you think you will merge with CORD? Will you be
NAC
running
Kenya
for
will
president?
not
Is this
merge.
a political push for
NAC
2017?
Kenya is a political party, but we will continue to collaborate with other parties in the opposition. And I have said it before, we work closely with CORD. It's an opposition party. Kenyans seem to have a very short memory. During the years we were pushing to oust KANU, all opposition parties used to work together after the elections. During elections, each party will conduct itself as an independent party running for elections. But thereafter, the opposition agenda was always together. But Kenyans have forgotten that. It's like they think everybody should be scrambling to support Jubilee or to become part of the Jubilee praise choir. Our mandate as the opposition is not to become anybody's praise choir, is to actually point out shortcomings. And it is an act of great patriotism to give constructive criticism to the current regime. And I and NAC Kenya are doing our patriotic duty of standing with others to push for what is right.
All right.
Yeah, if anything to do with the elections, that
Yes.
will come later.
Okay.
But there would be nothing wrong with us standing with other Kenyans.
All right. We
Yes.
thank you very much for your
Yes.
time. Chair
Yeah.
of Na Kenya Party, Martha
Thank you.
Karua, on the Okoa Kenya referendum push. We'll be watching the events to see how that plays out. Thank you for your time tonight. on
Welcome.
KTN Prime.
Yes.